It's now time for one of my favorite segments of the week with one of my favorite people that we have on the radio. And I'm not the only one that shares this opinion, but Monica Paige, she's loved and she's revered by all, including the Big 47.
I like you. Who are you with?
Turning Point USA, sir.
Well, they're very good. Turning Point. Charlie, very good. That's what I call a good question, fellas. 1 out of 10, John. 1 out of 10.
1 out of 10 is time for Behind the Fence with Monica Paige.
Live from the North Lawn of the White House, it's Beyond the Fence with Monica Paige.
I'll play this full Trump clip from Monica as we kind of get that ready to go. This is Donald Trump and Monica Paige earlier this week inside the White House.
Southern border, you've had record low numbers for the month of May, 95 apprehensions, 0 releases, compared to that of the previous administration exactly a year ago, more than 60,000 releases. What do you attribute that success to?
I like you. Who are you with?
Turning Point USA, sir.
Well, they're very good. Turning Point. Charlie, very good. That's what I call a good question, fellas. 1 out of 10, John. 1 out of 10, but that's a really good question. No, we had record good numbers on the border. And people are coming in, but they have to come in legally. Like some of these guys behind me, they have to come in legally. And if they come in legally, we want them. They have to say they love America, they love our country. And if they can't say that, we don't want them. Thank you very much. Very nice. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody. He said, that's how he ends. He says, we got 1 good question out of 10. The 1 good question was from our own Monica Paige, White House reporter.
I am here. I'm here at the White House. I could hear you. That's a fantastic quote from the president. That was an amazing segment. And I'm so honored that I was actually getting into the White House on behalf of Turning Point. It was such a great day.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you've had a busy week, and I apologize for the technical difficulties getting you in. We're working behind the scenes on some things, but thank you. But you've had a busy week, and before we even get started, I want to give you some flowers. Monica had a fantastic speech last weekend at Young Women's Leadership Summit with Turning Point USA. She absolutely crushed. And if you didn't see Monica's speech, it's live on Rumble now. Just go search for Young Women's Leadership Summit. So how do you go from crushing at YWLS to then having this kind of a week that you've had where you're standing next to the president while they're installing flagpoles? You're in the Oval Office asking the only good question out of 10. Just run through your week for me. It has been an absolute whirlwind, has it not?
Oh my gosh, whirlwind doesn't even begin to describe it. I mean, we came back from Dallas for the Young Women's Leadership Summit, and then we're immediately thrown in to the new media pool. And, Frontlines and Turning Point, we actually had the opportunity to be in the media pool here among the other reporters, and the other reporters being CNN and The Guardian, if you can imagine that. And on that specific day, Wednesday, we were able to go to the South Lawn and watch the official lifting of the South Lawn pole and the North Lawn one as well. You can kind of actually see it in the background here. That's the very top of it. You can imagine just how massive this flagpole is. It's close to 100 feet tall. Yeah, and it's gorgeous. I mean, we got to see the actual flag go up. We got to see the pole go up. But when we were on the South Lawn, we got to talk to the president one-on-one. And I actually had a really great spot. I did not plan this at all. I just kind of snuck up kind of next to him, and I was just talking to him like he was my friend. Like, we were talking for a long time. And the president is huge into the construction business. As everybody knows, before he was president, he was big into contracting jobs throughout Manhattan. And he really loves this kind of stuff. He was walking us through the process of, how the flagpole is installed. And he's very interested in these kinds of things. And it was very interesting to hear him speak about these kinds of things. And of course, asking him all sorts of questions. And then it was a very impromptu later in the day meeting in the Oval Office, and he welcomed the Italian Soccer League here at the White House before their big game, the Club Soccer League here in Washington, D.C. And he took some questions, and I got to ask about the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on who was running the White House during the Biden administration. And that's when President Trump said it was the auto pen. And then I decided to hit him with one more. And it's not the easiest to ask questions to the president because A, it's very intimidating being among all these other reporters. And B, just shouting out a question instead of just kind of like raising your hand is kind of awkward, especially when you're dealing with the president of the United States. And he really loved the border numbers. I mean, of course, all the questions were about the Israel and Iran conflicts overseas. So I decided to spice things up and highlight some wins for the administration and what he does attribute this success to at the southern border, because we had an invasion for the last 4 years. And I was just curious, what does he attribute this to? What does he think of these amazing numbers? So it was a very exciting and very busy day.
Yeah, I mean, you've been rolling like 1,000 miles per hour, and the border numbers have been fantastic. I mean, close to 1 million self deportations, 0 releases into the country in May, 93% down for illegal border crossings. A lot of wins to rack up, but if you're not paying attention, you kind of miss them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what's also really important because when you hear about this news and it's like, oh, President Trump's still negotiating, President Trump might strike Iran, we have to focus on what the president is actually doing. And he doesn't want to go to war with Iran. He wants to negotiate with Iran. And the press secretary just yesterday made that abundantly clear. Trust President Trump. Back in November of 2023, when he was in New Hampshire, he said that peace through strength is not a political slogan. It's his moral duty to make this promise to Americans that we wouldn't go to war. So Caroline Levitt highlighting that exact same sentiment yesterday, saying, trust him, trust this process. And this administration actually has a lot of solid wins. And unfortunately, the media just isn't highlighting them.
No, the media won't, because, why make the orange man look
Right.
good? Now, when we were hanging out at Young Women's Leadership Summit in Dallas, you were like, oh, it's going to be a busy week because President Trump's going to be back from the G7 on Wednesday. Yet we all know that he ended up leaving early, which made your week much busier. What have you heard out of the G7? What's the feeling on the ground about how well it went, given how short he was there?
Yeah, the main takeaway from the G7 summit was that massive trade deal between the United States and the United Kingdom, these massive trade and tariff deals as far as, the imports and exports go. I believe it's going to be around $63 billion in revenue from these tariffs that we're placing on the UK. I think they're about 10% tariffs now as it pertains to United Kingdom. But that was really the key takeaway there. The president really wasn't able to have those closed door meetings. From what I understand, I believe the UK and Australia and the United States were all supposed to come together behind closed doors and continue to discuss these tariffs. But it was kind of very short, but I believe that these conversations with other countries will continue to pick up next week. The president going to The Hague in Netherlands for the NATO summit. So he's got a lot of international affairs that he's got to tend to, and we'll also be keeping an eye on that next week.
A lot of international affairs to attend to seems like the understatement of the century. What are you hearing, maybe not even just the leftist side of the reporters, but the conservative side, as far as the divide that Israel and Iran has kind of created in the base? What's the temperature on the ground at the White House with that?
So in the beginning of the week, I would say it was pretty tense. People here on the ground, we didn't really know where President Trump could be going, what direction he was going to take with this. And a lot of our worries and anxieties were kind of quelled when we had that press briefing yesterday, when we heard from Caroline Levitt herself. And I personally felt a sense of calm when we were on the South Lawn and we were speaking to President Trump during the flagpole ceremony. And when we were speaking to him, he seemed very calm, cool, and collected. He did not seem like any of this was bothering him, as far as maybe his base being split or the tensions with Iran, or that Iran's going to, do something unprecedented. He didn't seem stressed, or he didn't seem like he was in a bad mood. And just his overall demeanor was very reassuring to me, at least. And I think how this administration has been handling it is very commendable, because a lot of people could really get wrapped up in the stress of all of it. Oh no, World War III and the looming fear of Iran is finally coming to a head. But that's not really the case. And I feel like we can kind of rest easy now. But of course, you'll still have those fear mongers on social media. And that just goes to say, don't believe everything that you see on social media. Trust what's happening inside this White House. No,
and I think one thing that the entire base can agree on is that at least we know it's Trump making the decisions.
Right.
This isn't the Biden White House where you have no idea who's pulling the strings. Donald Trump is going to be the last man in the room, the last guy at the table, and he'll make the final call. And that's what we voted for him to do. So whatever happens, happens. What are you hearing when it comes to Israel and Iran? Where is the White House today? Are they going to continue talks about this over the weekend? What does the schedule look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we found out most recently that the president is giving this 2 weeks. And so this could be coming tomorrow or it could be coming during NATO. And it could be any time to make a decision with Iran. So there are conversations happening. The president is having these briefings behind closed doors all weekend. He's having one as we speak right now in the White House. And he'll also be hosting them. He's coming back from Bedminster on Saturday, where he's going to be holding meetings back here at the White House and Saturday and Sunday before he leaves for NATO. So this is going to be a nonstop process here. We don't really see an end to these discussions anytime soon, but we can kind of expect something happening within the next 2 weeks. And I've been saying this, we're all going to find out together essentially. So this is something that we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, definitely keeping an eye on. But with this kind of dominating the news cycle, one of my favorite things to ask you is, what are we missing? What are stories that we should be paying attention to that the mainstream media is not covering and that we're not hearing from these outlets?
Yeah, well, there was a big win last night coming out of California. The Ninth Circuit Court, three-panel judge, including one Biden judge, ruled unanimously in favor of President Trump keeping the California National Guard in California as these anti-ICE riots were breaking out. So it's a very obvious ruling here. And President Trump made it very clear that during his first term and when he was dealing with those Black Lives Matter riots, that he was going to make sure that he was going to do this right in terms of making sure that law-abiding citizens were protected on the ground. So now this is a big loss for Gavin Newsom, and this is a big win for President Trump. He can keep the California National Guard there and keep law-abiding citizens safe as these crazy protests break out. We've seen them all throughout Portland as well. I'm curious to see if President Trump will label these protesters what they really are, which are actually Antifa, and if he will declare Antifa a domestic terror organization. So these are kind of things that I'm looking forward to for the future, and also something big coming out of the White House that not many people are talking about.
No, nobody's talking about that. I mean, that is a huge win, and one of the biggest failures of the last administration was he almost waited too long. He waited for Waltz to bring in the National Guard. He shouldn't have. He should have done it right away.
Right.
He waited on January 6th for the National Guard. He should have done it on his own. So he's kind of learning from past mistakes. The one thing that you said, though, that kind of got me a little bit excited is designating Antifa as a terrorist organization. The LAPD police chief wouldn't even name Antifa during a press conference. Is there a chance that he could be labeling these guys domestic terrorists?
I mean, given what we've seen and given the amount of violence that we've seen, local police can't even handle this. This is all on federal officers. And, these Antifa rioters, they know exactly what they're doing. They're meant to lure in people. They're meant to get a rise out of the public. And this is a direct result of failed public policy, failed progressive policy, failed progressive leadership in these blue cities. This is what happens when you don't have law and order. And President Trump should be taking matters into his own hands, because if we're seeing things like this in these deep blue cities, it's a dangerous precedent that could be set throughout the entire country. Because if Portland's doing it, LA's doing it, we could see more of these starting up in other cities. And this is just the beginning. I know our colleague Jonathan Cho has been covering this.
Yes.
Props to him, for months, and it's nonstop. And he told me this is just the beginning. So if we're going to do something about it, we got to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like it's turning into Summer of Love 2.0. And
Right.
Jonathan Cho and your colleagues over at Frontlines have been doing a fantastic job of protest coverage. Everybody should go find Frontlines TPUSA on Twitter and Instagram and follow them for just the latest coverage, because you guys are doing big, big things. Monica Paige, you can find her on X at Monica Paige TV. Again, you need to go listen to her speech that she gave at Young Women's Leadership Summit, because it was absolutely fantastic. You have had a crazy week. Are you thinking that you're going to get any sleep this weekend?
No, not at all. I'm hoping to, because I got to catch up on it, but it's been so much fun, and it's always such an honor to be here on behalf of Turning Point USA and be able to bring you guys, what's really happening.
Hey, we appreciate you doing that every week. Monica Paige, find her on X at Monica Paige TV. Thank you again for the time. Apologies for the difficulties a little while earlier, but we appreciate you every week, Monica. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Have a great weekend and see you next week.